May 1945. The war ended not with a bang, but with silence. A radio crackled in the ranch house. Germany has surrendered. No one cheered. The women gathered by the fire, faces lit by flickering orange light, unsure whether to feel relief or grief. Frank poured coffee for everyone. "It's done now," he said quietly. "You all can go home soon." The word home hit harder than any bomb. What was home now? Rubble, ruin, ghosts. In the days that followed, trucks arrived to take them back to processing camps for repatriation. As Lisa packed her few belongings, letters, a wool scarf, her work gloves, Frank approached. "Reckon you'll be going home soon?" he asked. She nodded, throat tight. "Thank you, Mr. Callahan, for everything." He smiled. "Ain't nothing to thank me for. You worked hard. Earned your keep. That's all any of us can do." Then, with a playful glint in his eye, he handed her a package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a brand new cowboy hat, cream-colored, soft as suede. "So you don't forget Texas," he said. Lisa laughed through tears. She put it on, the brim to wide, shading her eyes like a promise. The ranch hands whooped. Someone shouted, "Yeehaw, the German cowgirl rides again." As the truck pulled away, she looked back through the slats. The barns, the windmill, the men waving their hats in farewell. She had come to Texas a prisoner. She was leaving as something else, someone who had glimpsed a different way of being human, where dignity came not from power, but from simple respect. On the road, she whispered, "Maybe we lost the war, but perhaps we can still win peace years later." Lisa would return not as a prisoner, but as an immigrant. She opened a bakery in San Antonio, blending strudel with pecans, pretzels with smoked salt. Above the counter hung a photograph, a young woman in 1945, wearing a cowboy hat too big for her head, standing beside a tall rancher with a shy smile. Beneath it, a simple inscription, "From enemies to friends." When asked about it, she'd say, "That's the man who taught me what America really is." Historians would later note that over 400,000 Axis prisoners passed through U.S. camps. During the war, many returned home with stories not of cruelty, but of decency. Those stories became quiet seeds of reconciliation, human bridges in a broken world. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't won on a battlefield. It's baked into an apple pie and offered with open hands. That night, the women were given a rare privilege, one uncensored sheet of paper each. They could write home, though the letters would still be read by camp officers before mailing. Lisa sat by lamplight, pencil trembling. "Dearest Mama, I am alive, and I must tell you something you will not believe. I work on a ranch in Texas. They call it a spread. The people here are kind, truly kind. They give us food. So much food I can hardly eat it all. They let us ride horses. The men wear hats as wide as dishes and drink something sweet from brown glass bottles. They play music after work and teach us their songs. Mama, they trust us. We could run, but we do not, because we are free in all the ways that matter. I never thought freedom could look like this." She paused, staring at the words. Would her mother think she'd gone mad? Back in Berlin, propaganda still screamed that American camps were torture chambers, that prisoners were starved, humiliated, used as slaves. Weeks later, replies came thin. Ration paper letters, censored on both ends. "Lisa, are you sure? You must be mistaken. Perhaps you are dreaming. They would never treat prisoners so well." Her mother wasn't alone. Other women received similar doubts. The families enduring bombing raids and bread lines. Tales of apple pie and cowboy hats sounded like fairy tales. Even the American officers chuckled. "Y'all are writing novels," one said, shaking his head. "Ain't nobody back there gonna believe you." But the truth was undeniable. Each day, the women rode deeper into a version of America that defied every lesson of war. They saw it in the abundant eggs by the dozen, meat by the pound, sugar by the sack. They saw it in the attitude, no bowing, no fear, no hierarchy. One afternoon, Lisa asked Frank why he treated them so kindly. He shrugged. "Lady, the war's over for you when you get here. Ain't no use fighting ghosts." It wasn't forgiveness. It was something more American, pragmatic mercy, worth measured by work, not by flag. Eleanor's kitchen was warm, fragrant with nutmeg and wood smoke. On the counter sat baskets of apples Arkansas blacks. She called them plump and red as rubies. Flour dusted the table like snow. Peel, Eleanor said, handed Lisa a paring knife for hours. They worked, slicing fruit, mixing dough, rolling crusts. Eleanor didn't speak much, but her hands moved with a quiet certainty that felt like prayer. She showed Lisa how to crimp the edges just so, how to vent the top crust in a star pattern. This pie, she said softly, is what we give to neighbors after a funeral or a birth. It's how we say, "You're not alone." Lisa's chest ached. In Germany, food was survival. Here, it was communion. When the pies went into the oven, the smell filled the house: cinnamon, butter, caramelizing sugar. The women gathered around the stove, silent, as if in church. Then Eleanor pulled out the first pie, golden, bubbling. She cut 6 slices and set them on chipped porcelain plates. Lisa took hers. The warmth seeped into her palms. She looked at the flaky crust, the amber filling, the steam rising like a sigh, and she fell to her knees, not out of weakness, not out of fear, but because, in that moment, the weight of everything, the war, the lies, the years of hunger and hatred crushed her. Here was proof that the world could still be gentle, that enemies could feed you pie, that dignity wasn't earned through rank or victory, but offered freely, like bread, one by one. The other women knelt beside her. No words, just tears falling into their plates. Eleanor didn't stop them. She just placed a hand on Lisa's shoulder and whispered, "Welcome to Texas, darling." Days turned into weeks. The women rose at dawn, fed the chickens, mended fences, scrubbed laundry in tubs of hot water. They learned to saddle horses, though none had ridden before. At first, their hands fumbled with bridles. Their legs ached from unfamiliar motion. But the ranch hands, Frank, young Billy, old Pete, never mocked them. They showed, not told, demonstrated how to braid reins, how to calm a spooked mare, how to read the sky for storms. One afternoon, a dust storm rolled in black clouds swallowing the sun. Cattle bolted. Without thinking, Lisa and the others sprinted to the corral, mounted bareback, and rode hard into the chaos. Rain came sideways. Mud sucked at hooves. But they herded the herd back, working in silent rhythm with the cowboys. When it was over, drenched and breathless, Frank handed them towels. "Guess y'all ain't just city girls after all." He grinned. That night, someone nailed a hand-painted sign above the bunkhouse door, "The German Cowgirls." Lisa laughed until she cried. Work became a bridge. Language followed. They learned English through chores. Bucket, rope, more coffee. The Americans picked up German words too: dank, bit, gut. Misunderstandings turned into jokes. Once, Lisa asked for soap, but said soup by mistake. Frank brought her a ladle of broth. They both howled, but beneath the laughter lay a quiet tension. These women were still prisoners. Letters home were censored. Fences, though low, were real. And every night, Lisa wondered, is this real? Or just a dream before the nightmare returns? Then came the day Frank's wife, Eleanor, invited them into the ranch house kitchen. "Y'all helped save the herd," she said. "Now help me bake." That evening, the women were shown to a bunkhouse, a simple wooden structure with cots, clean linens, and a pot-bellied stove already glowing with embers. On each narrow bed sat a tray, a bowl of beef stew, thick slices of fresh bread, butter wrapped in wax paper, and most astonishing of all, a small wedge of apple pie, its crust golden, steam still curling from the edges. Lisa stared at it. Her stomach growled, but her hands stayed still. "They're testing us," whispered Greta, a former field nurse from Hamburg. "It's poisoned or drugged. Why else would enemies feed us like this?" Another woman crossed herself. "In Dachau, they gave prisoners bread before gassing them." Lisa's throat tightened. She remembered the rumors. American camps were fronts for medical experiments. Female prisoners were used for labor, or worse. The Reich had made sure every woman in uniform knew the horror stories. But then Frank the cowboy leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. "Eat up," he said gently. "Peace best warm." He didn't wait for thanks, just tipped his hat and walked away. Silence fell. One by one, hunger overcame fear. Greta took a bite of stew, then another. No convulsions, no guards rushing in, just the crackle of the stove and the distant lowing of cattle. Lisa picked up her fork. The pie crust shattered softly. The filling was sweet, spiced with cinnamon, studded with apples so tender they melted on her tongue. She hadn't tasted fruit like this since before the war. Tears welled hot, sudden, shameful. She looked round. Every woman at the table was crying. Not from pain, from disbelief. Back home, rations were sawdust bread and turnip soup. Here, they were served dessert like guests. Later, as she lay in bed, Lisa thought, if this is a trick, it's the cruelest one yet because it makes me want to believe in kindness again. Texas, 1944. The sun had barely crested the eastern rim of the Panhandle when the convoy of olive drab trucks rolled through the red dust outside Amarillo. Their engines sputtered and died one by one, leaving only the hum of cicadas and the whisper of wind through mesquite branches. Inside the last truck sat a dozen women German prisoners of war, though none wore the uniform of a soldier. They were clerks, radio operators, nurses auxiliaries of the Luftwaffe, captured in the chaos of Normandy's collapse. Among them was 24-year-old Lisa Lottmann, her face gone, her eyes hollowed by weeks of ocean crossings and rail journeys through a continent at war. She had imagined America as a land of steel cages and concrete cells. Every poster in Berlin, every broadcast from Goebbels' ministry, had painted the same picture. Captured Germans would be starved, mocked, worked to death under a desert sun. She braced herself for shouting, for rifle butts, for the cold bark of orders. Instead, the truck door creaked open and a convoy said, "Ma'am, watch your step." A man stood there in a wide-brimmed hat, sleeves rolled to his elbows, dust coating his boots like a second skin. He wasn't a soldier. He looked like someone from a pre-war Western film, lean, sun-browned, eyes crinkled from years of squinting into horizons. Behind him stretched a sky so vast it seemed to swallow time itself. Blue, endless, indifferent to empires. Lisa stepped down, her knees trembling. The air smelled of hay, horses, and dry earth, not gunpowder, not fear. Around her, the other women moved like ghosts, clutching their meager bundles. There were no chains, no barbed wire in sight, just a few American soldiers leaning against fence posts, rifles slung over shoulders. Watching without hostility, the man handed her a tin cup. "Cold water," he said. "Plenty more where that came from." She drank it in one gulp, cleaner than anything she'd tasted since Paris. She didn't know what to say. Back home, they'd been told Americans were savages, a nation of greedy machines and moral rot. Yet here, in the soft heat of a Texas morning, she saw something that didn't fit the story. Cattle grazed lazily beyond split rail fences. A windmill turned with a slow, rhythmic creak. A dog barked, chasing dust devils across the yard. The cowboy pointed toward a cluster of low buildings. "You'll be helping out here feeding stock, cleaning stables, maybe even riding if you're up for it." "Riding?" She almost laughed. She'd expected shackles, not saddles. As the gate closed behind them, Lisa turned for one last look at the open plain. For the first time in months, she felt it, not hope, not yet, but something close, curiosity. She whispered to herself, half in disbelief, half in wonder, This is America."